Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from Brambleberry.com with a fall-inspired project. This perfect beginner's melt and pour project is inspired by, well, pumpkin pie. And I think you can see we've got a little bit of a crust and that pumpkin pie filling. It smells delicious. So this beginner project does use two separate layers of soap. The first one is with a clear melt and pour soap, because if you do a white melt and pour soap and try and get a brown, guess what color you get? You get a light brown. In order to do this project, we also are going to be using Brambleberry's pumpkin spice fragrance oil, which smells like a traditional pumpkin pie with cardamom, cinnamon, a little bit of vanilla, and that vanilla does mean it discolors. So to keep our pumpkin pie soap looking this color and not discoloring to a deep brown, we're also going to be using a fragrance additive called Vanilla Color Stabilizer. So to get started, we take 5 ounces of Brambleberry's clear melt and pour base. Now I've already got this measured, it's by weight, and then we're gonna also use the Brambleberry brown oxide color block. And so the reason that we're using the brown oxide color block is because it's a non-bleeding brown color, meaning our layers will stay really even. This brown won't start migrating up here because it's an oxide, which means that it stays color fast. I'm gonna use a pretty big chunk of this, like not quite a half of it, maybe 2/3 of it, and put it right into here and just get it melted down. One of the things I love about the Brambleberry color blocks is that they're pre-mixed into melt and pour base already, and they've been micronized, meaning these actually will melt in perfectly and you don't have to do any pre-mixing at all. Yes. This is a perfect color of brown, and you notice I just kind of eyeballed it, but it was really about 1/3 of this color block. I'm not going to fragrance the bottom of this for the crust because the pumpkin spice fragrance oil from Brambleberry.com is so strong that honestly, if you just fragrance this part, it's enough that the entire bar of soap smells amazing. So this is 5 ounces, and we're just going to pour it into our silicone mold evenly and divide the 5 ounces between the 6 cavities. And this Brambleberry 6-cavity silicone mold is fantastic because it also allows you to pop out the soap pretty quickly, and more importantly, it gives a really nice shiny bottom. And so that way when your soap comes out, it looks really appealing. I'm going to spray the top with alcohol just to get rid of any bubbles, and then I'm going to just leave this right here while I get to work on my orange, well, orangey brown top layer. This is the Brambleberry Goat's Milk Soap Base. I love it because the goat's milk addition really helps to make it have a creamy texture, and supposedly goat's milk is really good for skin and cell turnover. And so the lactic acid, which is naturally occurring in the goat's milk, really helps to promote a conditioning product. And in soap, I think you're going to love the creamy lather it gives. Now that our white melt and pour base is all chopped up, I'm going to put it in a heat-safe container and melt it in the microwave on 30-second bursts until it's fully melted. Now that this is melted, and this is right about 160 degrees, so it's far too warm to pour yet, but it is perfect for melting our orange color block. We're going to end up doing a lot more orange color block, and this is the Brambleberry Perfect Orange color block. It's also a non-bleeding color, and we want to do smaller little chunks of it because we need it to disperse into our white melt and pour base. And remember, we are coloring over a white color, which naturally will want to go pastel. So we're going to use a lot of the orange and just a little bit of that brown to kind of tamp it down and get our perfect pumpkin pie color. And then we're just going to let the heat of that melt and pour base, which again, about 160, melt our orange color block. And then we can start adding in the brown slowly. Now the brown, remember, we can't take out, so we're going to add it in really slowly until we get the perfect color. But I want to make sure most of that orange is fully incorporated in. Now I'm going to start adding my brown now that my orange is a good color. So I'm just going to start with a little bit. I'm probably going to need more than this, but I really want to make sure I don't end up adding too much. Now that this brown is fully melted in, I can see I could do a little bit more. So I'm going to go just with a little bit more. After all, a pumpkin pie is more of a, well, a brownie orange and not an orange because pumpkin puree isn't really all that straight up fiery orange either. So a little bit more brown chunks. and I'm eyeballing it, but I've probably used about 1/8 of the color block for the brown, and I used almost about half of that perfect orange color block in here in the full 1 pound of goat's milk melt and pour soap. Now that I have all of my color pretty much perfect, I'm going to start incorporating in my fragrance, the vanilla color stabilizer, and this ground up pumpkin powder. The ground up pumpkin powder adds a little bit of scrubbiness, gives a little bit of texture, and I really like the feel in soap. So I am going to go ahead and disperse this pumpkin powder. And another fun thing about the pumpkin powder is you can actually say, hey, there is real pumpkin in my soap because this is real pumpkin powder. The way you disperse it is 1 teaspoon of the pumpkin powder into 1 tablespoon of rubbing alcohol. Now you could always use a liquid oil if you wanted to, but it's just about getting the clumps out. And I personally find that more than like a tablespoon of extra oil in my melt and pour soap weighs down the lather enough that I don't really love it. So now that this is all incorporated in, I'm going to work on the cinnamon. And this just has 1/8 teaspoon, so not very much cinnamon, and that's because we want it to provide a little bit of exfoliation, but we also want to make sure that we don't end up irritating the skin, right? But this is a rinse-off product, so we don't have to worry that much about that. All of this goes into here, and if your soap has started to form a skin on it, like mine has, you can just stir that right back up, or you can put this in the microwave for another 10 seconds at a time. Finally, it's time to add my fragrance and my vanilla color stabilizer. Vanilla color stabilizer is a stabilizer. It's a fragrance additive that keeps this fragrance from turning my soap even more brown. You use it 1 part to 1 part, meaning I'm going to use 0.3 ounces of this pumpkin spice fragrance from Brambleberry, and then I'm going to do 0.3 ounces of the vanilla color stabilizer. And this will keep the soap from going brown. Do note, if you also make cold process soap, the vanilla color stabilizer doesn't work in cold process soap. But in melt and pour soap, it sure does the trick. Stir this in really well, and keep in mind that since this soap is opaque, you can't actually see when it's been fully incorporated in. So you're going to want to stir for probably a good 30 seconds because any melt and pour that doesn't have its fragrance fully incorporated in, that fragrance can float to the surface of the soap or even worse, hurt your soap mold. So you want to make sure that fragrance and that vanilla color stabilizer is fully incorporated in. While you're stirring, go ahead and give a quick check to these first layers. We want to make sure they have a thick enough skin on them that they'll be able to suspend that second layer. You also want to make sure that the soap isn't so hot that it's going to melt that first layer. So we're right about 136, which is pretty perfect. This is pretty thick already. It's set up really nicely already. So it's going to take this layer at 136 pretty well. So this is perfectly colored, perfectly fragranced. It's got its additives. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of rubbing alcohol between the 2 layers to make sure that there hasn't been anything that's gotten on that first layer that might make it impossible for those 2 layers to bind. It also helps to remove any surface tension, so the first layer and the second layer have nice even pores. So now, to get rid of the bubbles on the top of the soap here, we do a little bit of rubbing alcohol, and that breaks the surface tension of the bubbles. And our final finishing touch is just a little bit of cinnamon sprinkled onto the top. Now sprinkling, that's a personal preference. It's kind of a fine art, so you can sprinkle it from really high up, you can sprinkle it from lower, you can do bigger chunks. It's really just there to provide a little bit of interest and just really showcase the fact that this is really a pumpkin pie type of soap. So now it's just time to let these harden for just a few hours until they're ready to unmold, and you can use them right away. You can give them away, you can wrap them up. They are ready to go. The perfect stocking stuffer or last minute holiday craft fair if you didn't make enough product. I did make some earlier though, so I can show you just how easy it is to unmold these. So let's move this out of the way, and I am going to show you these finished soaps. So to remove these, you just pop them on their front face here. You pull gently away from the sides to break the airlock. And then all you need to do is just push down with your thumbs, and you'll see the airlock breaking in the back. And there you go. They're so easy to release. That's one of the joys of working with silicone as a soap mold. So now we just pop them over like this, and voila, perfect pumpkin pie, melt and pour soaps, ready for gifting, ready for using, and ready for the holidays. If you liked this video, give a thumbs up below. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? We have over 100 free videos, and you'll be notified each and every time we come out with a new video. When you make this, I'd love to see your creations. Hashtag them, hashtag Bramble on. Inspire me, inspire everybody, because everybody's creative. Until next time, happy soaping.